Some of the older fans, they get it because they see all the very early references. But I think the younger fans are on a journey of learning with the rest of us.
Yeah, I mean, with the Green Lantern, it seems that there's almost, because each issue almost seems to be a different kind of story from the last, and certainly still keeps that police procedural in the background. I think this, to me, it seems to be almost a different influence depending on what the kind of story is that you're telling. Yeah, and that only adds further strength, more interactivity between the reader and the artist. Because I'd argue that we live in a world where the artist and the writer are both important, and I think it seems to be that you're really sort of buzzing off Grant Morrison, and he seems to be buzzing off you. How does that partnership work?
I think it's just it's semi-telepathic now. It's he writes very specifically for me now, which is lovely. I've got his trust. He knows that he knows I'm an old fart like he is, and I've been around for a long time, so he can throw pretty much anything at me, and I usually get the references. But I think, you know, sometimes the right person for the right book comes along at the right time, and oddly, I was just the right person for this book. He said to me that he wouldn't have done it if I wasn't drawing it, which is high praise. I don't know if it's entirely true. But I have no reason to doubt Grant at all. But it's just me, just sort of.
But were you ever a Green Lantern fan? Because we grew up in that sort of era where you had Dave Gibbons and that sort of draftsmanship style he brought to those covers. The ones that I've memorised in here. And I wonder whether you picked up those issues back in the 80s. You know, when we were about 3 or 4?
Well, I go back to the Neil Adams, Danny O'Neill run as well with the Green Arrow. That stuff was incredible. I think the 3 key artists that have influenced what I've done. I love Ivan Rice, by the way. He's absolutely astonishing. But I can't look at that stuff without feeling overwhelmed and intimidated because of this, you know, the amount of figure work that people say, I'm detailed, my God.
Yeah, you've only got to look at the hair of one of his people, it's amazing.
But I didn't want it to, I mean, there's no, if I'd have tried to do something that was like the last 20 years, it would have been, I could have been in danger of just doing something that kind of was trying too hard to be the same. And so I needed to step back and rethink it all, and I went to the 3 main guys I think of for the Green Lantern, and that's
Neil
Adams, Gil Kane, and Dave Gibbons. So they probably inform the way I draw Hal more than anybody else.
Yeah, and how? I mean, you mentioned that Grant Morrison had you and you specifically in mind. Was it one of those things that he approached you about? You were aware that you'd come to the end of your run on Wonder Woman. Of course, you had that lovely series, The Brave and the Bold. Was that already on the cards, or was that something that came back as you were writing and drawing The Brave and the Bold?
I think, I don't know, I think, I'm starting to think there's more to Grant's chaos magic than perhaps I would like to give it credit for. Being, it felt like the universe willed it into being. There was too many weird things that happened that just, like, we kept bumping into each other in random spots. I did a podcast about Wonder Woman, and ended up talking about a book that I've written called Paradise Rex Press, and the people who were interviewing me said, has Grant Morrison read that? You know, it sounds like something he'd really love. And I said, actually, with Grant, every time I meet him, I get completely tongue-tied because I'm a fan. I never know what to say to him, and I kind of shuffle away, embarrassed, and then kick myself later for not having had a better conversation. And they said, oh no, it's lovely. You should talk to him. And literally 2 weeks later, I was coming out of a hotel in San Diego, just at the end of the night, and Grant's coming the other way. And he just went, Liam! Give me this massive hug. And I was like, oh my God, this is really weird. And I was like, oh, Grant, how are you, mate? And then, you know, right after that, then he read Paradise Rex, and he absolutely loved it. And then we bumped into each other at the Wonder Woman premiere, and we just, you know, we were talking away, and before we knew it, they were tearing down everything around us, and we were the last 2 there. And we started talking about doing like a creator-owned book because I'd said, oddly, as she said, I've got this idea about Batman going to an alien planet and solving the mystery on a planet where there's no crime. There's never been, and there's been a murder, and they need a detective, so they can't get Batman. They would have Green Lantern. And she ended up, of course, being Brave and the Bold.
Yeah.
And Grant's like, no, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do any more mainstream stuff. We'll do something creator-owned together. And we started throwing ideas around for that. But he was definitely never doing another mainstream series again, ongoing series again. And then I finished The Brave and the Bold, and Dan said, I actually pitched a Warlord series, and Dan said, yeah, it'd be great, but we need you to do Hawkman. So, Hawkman, okay, I'll think about that. And then Scott Snyder was like, no, I need you to do the Justice League. I was like, okay, that's a nice choice. And then literally almost the next day, Dan phones up and says, this is really left field and you're not going to believe it, but how do you fancy doing the Green Lantern with Grant Morrison? I was like, what, Grant? He said, yeah, well, we went for a meal and I pitched the Green Lantern. And he said, no, there's no way I'm going to do it. No way, I'm never doing another mainstream ongoing series. But if you're going to do the Green Lantern, you should do this. And then he proceeded to talk himself into it.
Had you even thought at that point about what your next project was going to be, or were there certain characters that you would love to have done? Like you said, people seem to be coming at you from all angles. Do Justice League, do Hawkman, and Brian Hitch is killing it on that.
Yeah.
And of course, Jorge Jimenez on Justice League are amazing. I know you've done some work on Justice League as well.
Any of them would have been fun. Actually, I think with the Justice League, the only thing that gave me pause for thought was that it was going to be the part of the story that was Aquaman and Wonder Woman. And at that point, I was kind of like,
been there, done that.
well, I fell in love with Greg Rucka's version of Wonder Woman. I just liked his voice for her. I liked who she was, and so when I wrote Brave and the Bold, I did everything I could to be true to the version that we sort of co-created together, and with Nicola as well, because that's just that's just the voice I have in my head, and a lot of other writers write very different versions, and I just, I think Scott's version is a bit more badass than that. And it would have been cool, but it would have been different. So it was just, I had a little bit of a pause for thought there. Hawk, Rob Venditti, you can't go wrong, It would have been it would have been great, and I did talk to him, and it did sound awesome. But because of this sort of gravity that I had with Graham, when Dan laid that on the table, it was just like, no, I've got to do that. And then when I heard it was like, definitely 12 issues, but ideally 24. And then it was
Is it still 12 issues?
No, it's 24.
Good, excellent.
And it was, it was then a case of like, okay, I'm doing it, but no one else is doing it. And Dan tried to pull it forward. I was like, no, you've got to keep it back, because I'm doing all the issues. I don't want fill-ins. I don't want, And it wasn't that I don't know how you lot feel, but for me, when I really care about a book, it's really frustrating, and it's not anything to do with the artists that are brought in to do fill-ins. It's just to do with it taking you out of the story a little bit. I think it really helps when you've got one team on a story, especially, and it's really nice if you can follow them for the whole arc and feel like you've got a body of work that you can put on the shelf and know that team really cared, and it has an absolutely unified vision for the world. I think as well, especially, the effort that I go to in terms of world building, it's quite frustrating when someone comes in and completely trashes your world and redesigns it all, and you go, that's not that place, that's not how I see it. So I thought pretty hard for that, and I've been working bloody hard to make sure that that's the case. Stay ahead of the deadlines and not get behind and not cause a late shipping or cause any kind of editorial hassles. But it's designed around 2 seasons basically, so 12 issues, then a break, then another 12 issues.
Is that a model going? It seems to be the model that Marvel does, but they don't tell their readers. What I like about you is you said, right, this is a finite amount of issues, we'll get them out, there won't be any filling artists. it bodes well when you have the reprints, which is another market altogether. We're almost getting towards a European model here, which I always thought, in my mind, is the next step forward in the evolution of comics. Is this the way you see comics going, or is this just something that works for you and Grant's team up at the moment?
I think if you can make it work like that, then all the better. I think it's hard to make it work like that because, of course, they have to get the books out. They have their overheads and they have, targets that they have to meet. So they're between a rock and a hard place a lot of the time. And I think they're very happy when they get a team that is able to do that. But they don't. DC's pretty. In my experience, the last 3.5 years, they really try hard to make sure that it's in arcs and the actual, each little arc is not broken up too much, and that when you jump to the next artist, that's the beginning of another little mini arc. And there might be a big overarching story for the whole thing, but each bit is as consistent as it can be. And if you've got time, you can have a longer run like we're doing, where you can have one team on, 12 issue run as opposed to a 6 issue run or a 4 issue run. To your point, I think that with digital has changed the landscape, whether we like it or not. It was inevitable. And I think it's really interesting because a lot of people are New Comic Book Day is a big day for digital readers as well. They get on Comixology and they download their latest issue, and quite a lot of people. I think where it is good is it's a good entry point, and they tend to come back and get the trades. Amazing. But I do end up with every issue on my desktop. I end up with about 12 PDFs of the issues that he's referenced, and then I've got to go through them and find the page and the character, and sometimes he spells it wrong, which doesn't help. It's like, But also editorial have been great because I can find them online sometimes. If I start over a weekend and they're not around, Grant makes it easy to find it, but the editorial send me PDFs, and they're really on top of it. They get some intern to go and scour the libraries. But half the time, even the editors are going, who's this? Who's this character? They're completely forgotten. Sometimes these characters appear in one panel, in one issue. We've got a Windlass appears in a recent one. Windlass? Who's that? And he even finds there's even like an old Mr. Marvel girl, Marvel Man, which is like, well, we can't call them that anymore, but they were there.
But it adds, so not only world building creating something very original, which is what brings comics forward, but it feels like a DC comic every bit. There are characters where, certainly for me, I kind of remember who that guy is, and I'll go to the internet and try and find it out. And that's what I mean about the inactivity of comics. Some comics you'll put down and you've read them, other comics you'll come back to. I think with yours and Grant's comic, and maybe it's just the nerdiness in me, I feel like I do want to know more about the process behind it and the sort of characters in it. And it adds that extra element of enjoyment when you can interact more with something like a comic.
Grant's drawing on stuff that he read when he was a kid,
Yes.
So he has. I think he's got to be on some level a little bit like. He's got to have a photographic memory of some kind. He seems to have no problem recalling these stories and these characters and this imagery from the past. He just seems to dredge it up from somewhere. I mean, it's profoundly. His ability to hold a huge arc together in his head is incredible. I know he takes a lot of notes. He actually thumbnails every issue. I don't know how many people know that, but he draws it all out himself. He doesn't show me that.
Oh, he doesn't? I love that.
Because he's actually a very generous person to tell, and it's interesting too because I start to equate that to like the way Kirby worked. It was like it just speeded up and up and up and up, and if I remember when this is a complete I'm digressing completely.
That's what the best panel's all about, I think, Liam.
But like with Kirby, when I was younger, I thought, this drawing is crazy, I don't get it. I wanted like Buscema type, really beautifully rendered anatomy and everything, and Kirby just seemed to throw everything to the wind. But now when I look at Kirby, it just makes me smile, it brings me joy, because what I'm seeing is a guy who's so determined to tell these stories that he's running 100 miles an hour, and it's always full of energy, it's always full of joy, and it's always completely recognisably his. But I get it as well. I think there's a point where it's like, I have these stories, I need to tell them, and I think with Grant, he had so much in his head as a writer that he made the right decision. He should be writing. He needed to be sharing that with us. And that's why his stories are so hyper-compressed, because he has so many stories to tell. In every issue, sometimes you'll have a page with one little reference that is dealt with in maybe 2 panels that other writers have used 3 or 4 issues to tell a whole story. And I like both. I like hyper-compressed storytelling, and I like it when there's a lot of exposition. I don't have a favourite. I like it both. I like The Ultimates for me was a very slow reveal with Mark Miller and Brian Hitch on that thing. It was but one of the best comics I've ever read for me. But at the same time, Grant also is one of the best writers I've ever read, and he does the exact opposite. It always frustrates me when people start getting grumpy about, well, it should be this, it should be this. There's no should be, it can be whatever it wants to be, it's just whatever's your taste.
He certainly seems to squeeze quite a lot into every issue of the Green Lantern. Sometimes I'm surprised in 22 pages how much he's put in. Surely that must make you have to work harder, doesn't it? Is this one of the comic books where you probably had to work harder than maybe on another comic book? Let's shoot Razor Bolt, for example.
Have you seen these eyes? Piss holes in the snow.
What's an average day for you then on the Green Lantern? Because obviously I follow it, as a lot of people do, and it's almost with great pride and relief you say, right, I've finished that issue. And it is great pride, you've got it onto deadline, which is something a lot of artists can't do, for whatever reasons. But as I say, what you've got here is are you aware that this could possibly be looked back in time as one of those seminal runs in Green Lantern, just like, Green Lantern hitting the road with Green Arrow and having those magic mushrooms was for me as a kid. I didn't even know what that was about.
I think anything with Grant is likely to be remembered as seminal, so it's less about what I bring to the table and more about just a duty of care to the title, because Grant's writing it and because it's the Green Lantern.
I think you're being modest there. And
it's not for me to say.
No, I know. I'll say it for you then. But I think a great run, we're talking about comics, we're talking about visual medium, and I think what makes great runs, it's not just a great story, it has to be the great arc. And because you're so in simpatico with each other, like you said, almost telepathic, that's what I think makes a great comic. You can feel the enthusiasm from both you and Grant fizzing off the page.
I think I have to. Normally when the issues come out, I look at it and all I ever see is the flaws. The one exception is I finally got to see the printed issue of issue 7. I don't know if anyone's
That's
seen
just come out this week, hasn't it? Yeah.
I only saw it today. That one, I think, is probably the issue of my career so far. I think it's got something, and it's not always about the amount of detail, and it's not always about. It's not even always about how good the drawing is. Sometimes what makes it is kind of a weird, undefinable thing that you just feel as much as anything. But that one has got a kind of innate magic to it. Everything just came together. It's really special. Yeah. I'm very proud of that one. But hopefully there'll be a couple more of them in the road as well.
Yeah, well, with 24 issues, so certainly, you mentioned you always see the flaws. I hear that so often. Is it hard then, because I know you are a very modest person, is it hard then to come to a place like this, to come to bigger conventions in America and have all of these people falling over you because they love your work and they get to know you, I suppose, either online, because you're a force of good online, like so many comic, well, there's a lot online, we're not going to mention comic games, but there is so many people out there who are a force of good. who do still seem to be fans of the medium, and not just say, I do this, I love it, but I don't read comics anymore, I don't follow other artists or writers anymore?
There's a lot in that.
There is a lot. Can it be overwhelming, I suppose?
That's almost as overwhelming as that question.
I'm only 6, what do you expect?
Of course. I don't know. Because I had a moment in the sun back in the early 90s, I had a very different experience then of being young and you kind of a little bit more gung-ho when you're young. You don't fully appreciate the steps that have got you onto the book that you're drawing at the time. So when I was 25 and drawing the Hulk, I was just a kid. And it seemed like there'd been sort of logical steps to that. And now I realise that it doesn't matter about logic. It doesn't matter even how good you are half the time. The doors opening at the right time are a billion to one. It doesn't matter, because there's only so many books.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's only so many good books at DC, there's only so many books at Marvel. When you figure out just how few they are in the big scheme of things and how many of us there are in the world, the chances of getting on any of them is insanely slim. So I'm much more aware of the sort of rarefied air that I'm breathing. I think there's something good about the gung-ho nature of being young, in that you're prepared to sort of slaughter your gods and tear down the temples a little bit. And also they were pre-internet days, so we didn't quite get the same amount of slack, God.
Well, that can be hard though.
Well, doing the Hulk, there was an issue that dealt with abortion, which, if that was now, I would have faced. Can you imagine what I would have been facing on the Hulk on the internet?
I know, yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many issues from the 90s like that, and even from the 80s, yes.
So, I mean, the kind of balls of steel that we had when we were younger to just go and,
But it's still changing though. Obviously, thankfully we live in more liberal times and more sort of equal times. We've still got a long way to go. But do you think sometimes that could almost censor comics?
Yeah, I do. Actually, it worries me about that too. Just that if we're scared, then if we're afraid and we start letting fandom backseat drive everything, we're basically not being true creatives. And that's not to say we shouldn't respect fandom, but the reality is every new generation has a new set of fans. So people who love Green Lantern, that some will hate the 90s version but love the 80s version. There'll be others who love the 70s. Right, but it's impossible. Everyone has their favourite version, so you can't please everybody. And I don't want to sound like I'm not as brave as I used to be. I think the thing is working with Grant. He doesn't care. We had him arrest. We had Green Lantern arrest God.
Yeah, that was a great issue.
I think. So we're still having fun with it. But really, what I'm saying is my sense as an older person is not so privileged. I feel very honoured to be drawing these characters. It may be that they're corporate characters, but that doesn't matter. They're still these iconic characters that have transcended, the medium in ways that's pretty hard to comprehend, and probably will never happen again with a new wave of characters. I don't think there's many. Even I think Hellboy maybe has come close. Some of the Image characters. But it's very hard. I don't know how many of them really are on the level of like a Superman or a Batman or a Wonder Woman or even Green Lantern. It's very hard to. So just appreciating that it's rarefied air and respecting the unbroken legacy of those characters is. It's more about that. It's more about respect for it, and making damn sure that you give it what it deserves.
Yes.
Because it does deserve your best. You shouldn't be doing it. If you're not going to treat an icon like that, you shouldn't you shouldn't be doing it if you're not going to give it 100%. So, you know, yeah, it's changed.
Yeah,
but it's overwhelming.
I mean, you know, you mentioned just turned 51. That would often have been a death knell for an artist or a writer back in the day. And of course, we had all of those, Gene Colan, for example, who, you know, are forgotten about. And even...
But it wasn't for Kirby.
Not for Kirby, no, that's true, yeah, but he was sort of maybe an exception to the rule, I suppose. Because look at someone like Jerry Ordway, for example, like that. You know, he doesn't get as much work as he used to, and yet, listening to Roy Thomas, to me, I can still remember every issue of All-Star Squadron, and
right.
because of what Jerry Ordway brought to it.
Well, maybe things have changed. I don't think comics is ageist in any way. Okay. If it was in the past, it might have been. The fact that I'm the youngest person on the book, you know, Grant's 58, Tom Osikowski, I think he's in his 70s, and Steve Olive is well into his 60s.
So they think I'll call you son, do they?
Yeah, no, I'm the young whippersnapper, you know, upstart, you know, the young punk.
I'd love to see that get together.
Well, they're great. You know, they're all so young at heart. You know.
Yeah.
Granny never met. Well, again, it's that chaos magic. I think he looks about 42.
Must be the further north you go in Britain, the better the air.
It's just preserved in the eyes. Winter is coming.
So you mentioned issue number 7, and of course we've had 6 issues before that. Are there any standout moments in terms of the script? I don't, you know, I mean that God one was great because it was a great red herring. It really was. And if anyone hasn't read it, I'm not going to spoil it for them. They should go and read it. But you know, even in, as a just 7 issues,
yeah.
and each one's been a cracker in their own way. But which ones you've actually enjoyed when you maybe sat back and read it back to yourself?
Oh, they all make me laugh. And pretty much every single issue's got a funny line in it somewhere. But I think 3 was the most Python-esque. It's like when you've got Hal going, come on, he looks like this, and even the kind of evil villain just goes, so? And it's like, yeah, we don't judge people by the way they look now. You know? And it's like, but right, you're all under arrest. You know?
Yeah.
I like the sort of preposterous nature of it. You know? You're drunk in charge of a planet, so I'm going to put the whole planet under arrest. It's lovely because he's got a great balance between somehow making this police procedural completely preposterous. People say weird. I think weird in the sense of like it's like classic weird fiction, but also very, very funny, and then suddenly kind of shocking. And if you can pull off shocking and moving in that odd territory that the whole book is in, then yeah, you're a genius, really. And that is the genius, I think, of Grant. He makes us care even when it seems like it's so bizarre and surreal that you couldn't possibly really care. You know. But you do. You get swept up by it.
You mentioned the artistic references that are close to your heart, and certainly they come through. But for me, especially some of the more bizarro-looking lanterns, it has that vibe of Alan Moore, that sort of bizarreness to it, that only adds more fun to, you know, a universe full of daft-looking aliens, to be honest. Are we going to see any of those back in again? I'm going to get his name wrong now, Volcanic? Volk, that was a great one. To me, that was straight out of those sort of Tales of the Green Lantern Corps, those 8-page
Well,
things.
it was just Kevin Neal.
Yeah.
So, you know, Kevin Neal drew him before. We do have sort of, we kind of want to make sense of it.
Yeah.
A lot of the science behind it is true. You know, it's as researched and state-of-the-art as you can get. So, Grant's reading everything. But even like with Volk, we're like, how does he talk? Okay, he's got to be like a magma being inside there.
Yeah.
And the costume just keeps him together, and he must have like crystal vocal cords that work when the magma pops out of it, which is why he has that kind of active way of talking, you know. And even down to like, and the fact that his face he's the cloud above him has got a little bit of a face in it.
Yeah.
That really funny big long mouth and everything. And Grant's like, oh, can you imagine the concentration it takes to keep that face on the cloud? And I'm like, how does that even work? I'll roll with it.
Well, it's suspension disbelief, isn't it? You know, you can't.
But the fact that that's where Grant's brain goes with it, can you imagine the concentration? But even then, you know, when he's in space, it's like there's no gravity, so it goes to a perfect sphere. And whether that's accurate or not, it doesn't really matter. It's fun. It's fun to think.
Izzy, then, I know it's quarter to. I'm going to open it up to questions from the floor in a moment. So this will be my last question for now, unless there's no questions from the floor. Is he? I just popped into my head as we were talking about all this. Is he kind of trying to do what he did with Batman? Make sense of all of, I mean, obviously, the Silver Age Green Lantern that we're dealing with here has got a shorter history, but my goodness, it's still convoluted. And maybe that's at the back of it as well, creating a comprehensive Green Lantern that anyone could get into on the ground floor.
Honestly, I think that even with Wonder Woman and the Rebirth thing, the whole idea of that, and I'm talking to Greg about that, the idea was it was a consolidation of everything that had come before. And to make sense of it, and to pay homage to it, and to be, you know, reverential to it, without being completely strapped to it, of course, because that's impossible. I think you can absolutely apply that thought process to what we're doing with the Green Lantern, in that it's a consolidation of, you know, as much of the history of it as we can. And you see a little bit of that. I mean, even going back to Ran and everything. We were really determined that it would feel like an Atom Age story. Actually, you know, there's been such a kind of passage of time that when you make something look like it's from that period in sort of Art Nouveau and it's Art Deco really, it feels alien now because it's been long enough.
Yeah.
So it's nice to put them back in those original costumes, even like a lot of the costumes, like it was an old costume that I found in one of the very earliest books, and Steve Olive coloured her in the same colours too. So there's all the way through, you know, they've all appeared somewhere, and we've tried to sort of go right back to the early ones, like these slavers, you know. Those guys, I've stuck extra joints in their legs, but they did wear those stupid shorts and the caps and weird, you know, and big eyes. They all seem to have bug eyes with a single dot in them. Just the weirdest looking things. But that's what Grant has this lovely glee about. That when he looks back, he just goes, oh, the weirdest looking things. There, look at that original. It's like it's just the weirdest looking thing. Do that. Do that. Which is fine by me, because again, if you go back to those early references, the way they designed things and they thought about alien life was much more naive and all at once much weirder. You know? And I think that's really refreshing, because I think there's been a tendency for the last probably 30 years to try and make aliens just, the bad guys just got bigger and bigger and bigger and more muscular and like had more pads and more, you know, things stuck on them. And smaller and smaller noses and bigger chins. You know? It's like that's been a kind of tendency for everything to kind of go, and it's nice. It's nice going against that and facing the challenge. That was really Grant's direction. It's like, don't go that way. Yeah. Let's not do the big hyper steroid version. Let's go back to the weird, scary, like.
Very evocative, isn't it? It is very evocative. And I'd say it's evocative of a DC that has been before and a DC that kind of still exists now.
Yeah. And also, I think, you know, I totally, personally made the same mistake. I was drawn more and more to bigger and bigger, more muscular, kind of crazily huge things in my past. So it's actually quite refreshing for me to almost play against type a little bit with some of these characters. Grant was like, he loved the sort of the vertical eye opening. He said, oh, it's like they're animated, you know, you could really see him moving with his eyes sort of closing like that. Tried to create expressions for an alien whose eyes open vertically is really weird, but you can do it. It's
Trying to test you, isn't it? I'm going to open it up to the audience, because the last thing I said was a statement, not a question, so I got away with that. Any questions from the floor? I know Leonard's got one, so it's always nice to start off. I'm sure they'll be rolled in after this. Glenn?
Well, it's about the last two projects. We're talking Brave and Bold, and we're talking the Green Lantern, which were two different approaches. You had the Brave and Bold, which you did the artwork, you did the script. It was something very much out of your brain, and it was a controlled effort by yourself. Right. And then you have the Green Lantern, where you are collaborating with Grant. Which do you feel more rewarded by? The one where you are in control of the entire project and you are pouring your heart and soul into it, art and script, or kind of figuring out this script that's coming at you and kind of working out the puzzle that is Grant Morrison's script?
I think the thing is I compartmentalise the two jobs. So if I'm writing, I try really hard not to write for me. I don't write for me, I really don't. The overall concept might be mine, but when I get my own scripts, I'll open them up and go, oh, you bastard, okay, you're going to make me draw that? Who is this guy? Who does he think I am?
Crap,
oh,
it's me.
You're drawing a bloody car. I don't want to draw the Batmobile. It's like... I actually like drawing. I can draw them from my head. I really like drawing horses. Yeah, so I really like writing scripts. I've been pitching a few. I'm hoping I've got some projects for other artists to draw with me writing, which that excites the hell out of me. Brave and Bold, of course. There's the whole layers to that. The fact that it was 30 years in the making. I've wanted to do Irish mythology forever. You know. And particularly, Canunus isn't Irish, he's a Celtic god, but I've always loved Canunus as a character. And there was a point before I started doing Death's Head where I nearly went to Bournemouth Film School, and one of the things that I did was write a treatment for a short film, which was basically Merlin and Canunus. It was almost like a Seventh Seal type thing with them playing chess on the top of a mountain and talking about the fate of men, and I imagined it being very sort of Terry Gilliam with yeah, of course. But since then I had this Canunus in my head as this character that I really, really wanted to see alive, you know, come to life in the pages. So that one's important. And also my father-in-law, who sadly died a couple of years ago, he'd been pushing me to do like Cullen or the Dawn or any number of like Irish mythology. I was a big fan of Jim Fitzpatrick. I knew more about the Silver Arm and the Book of Conquest and all of that than I did. I know the Dawn. It's all about him being which part of Ireland you're from quite often. So he's got Cullen was his man. So I still sort of feel like I owe him a Cullen story. But you know. Is being able to finally do something with the Irish myths. You know, I changed the last of the Danann Kings, made him Finn McCool essentially. The names are really close. So I was able to put him in and the giant references and the causeway and all of those kind of things. So that aspect of it is like, that's really personal and makes it special. But I would say that much as that book means more to me than I can ever express. I can't say that the process of doing it is one's more rewarding than another. I think what's been incredibly rewarding with the Green Lantern is just how well it's come across, given how evidently odd it is. You know, I love that it's reached an audience, the audience it had. So that's really rewarding. I think more than anything, that when you get a great rapport with your audience, that's where the real reward is, because then you feel like you've connected in some kind of way. There's a different level of feeling satisfied when you're working, just loving your job, which is the bit also really important, because that's love, and if you don't do it with love, then you shouldn't be doing it. So you do it all equally with love, but the reward is measured, I think, by how well it connects with the people who like it.
Okay.
And certainly with the Brave and the Bold, what I felt, you not only you've given them a pantheon of gods they could exploit if they wanted to, but you've also added something to Gotham City as well, the Irish Quarter, which I didn't know existed, but I'd love to go for a pint there. And I do hope these United States will, I hope someone picks that up at some point in the future.
Well, I did end it as book one, but I realised at the end of that, it's like, oh God, I've really created like so many potential stories out of the back. How do I, and then it's like, what's the best follow-up story? Because I love the idea of like, so what's, you've got these open portals, you've got a border story, you've got the immigrants coming through. You know, how is the America of DC dealing with their immigrants coming out of TNR? You know, by the same token, you've got other people who are probably down and out in Gotham and wherever else the portals are open, going in, looking for like a new life in Tiernanog, and you know, setting up, you can imagine starting like a little farmstead in a field somewhere in Tiernanog, and so I'm a bit tired, I'm going to lie down and waking up 100 years later, just like, everyone's dead.
Sounds like you've thought out the two.
There's so many possibilities, and then what, you know, they've been stuck in there for a long time. How they reflect the whole germ thing? Is there going to be a massive epidemic? And, you know, giants sort of collapsing in the street with the flu. And
I suppose it's like Japan put themselves on to
a friend of mine who actually was a big collector of my art, he just said, when I said, oh, I really wanted to get back into it, he said, just start drawing superheroes again. Go mainstream. Start posting them. So I did a Hulk fighting the Abomination piece that I posted on, and I did a Wolverine piece, and then I did, you know, Batman fighting Doc Croc. And I did a giant Batman in his lair, you know, in the Batcave. So I wasn't really aiming in. It was all very open, you know. I didn't really have a.
But you weren't sort of aiming for DC because
No,
that
not really.
was the comics that you grew up reading, or that you had a closer affinity to versus
So.
going back to Marvel.
When Wonder Woman happened, it actually, the bit that I missed out right at the beginning of this was that it was taking so long for Wonder Woman to come through, and I kept thinking it was falling through, and I'd sort of go, oh, thanks, but it looks like it's over, and Jim would go, no, wait, it's fine, we're happening, and then I'd hear nothing again for a long time. In that process, in that period, just before Christmas, I got offered Conan, when it was still a Dark Horse. And as Conan I've wanted to do for 30 years, or longer, actually, since I was a kid. That's probably the one character that I most wanted to draw for years and years and years. And I got offered it. So going into Christmas, I was like, oh, I've got Conan, awesome. So it swung round to January the 6th, and I emailed Jim right away, first day of work, and said, Jim, you know, thanks again for being behind me on Wonder Woman and everything, really appreciate it. Oh, but I've been offered Conan, and it's like, look, I wanted to do all my life a dream project, so it's all good, it's fine. And he just went, no! And this, he said, we need you to do Wonder Woman. I was actually at Mayfire at the time, and I kind of went, oh bloody hell, they really do want me to do Wonder Woman. And then it was like, okay. It took me less than a minute to decide between the two. And even when I told Dark Horse, they were like, yeah, well, of course you've got to have Wonder Woman. Because it seemed like you could do Wonder Woman and then maybe down the line draw Conan Wonder and Bold, even more so, and I had total control over it. And then there's the other aspect that, like with Wonder Woman, it's not just fantasy all the time. You know, it's also superheroes, it's also there's sci-fi, it's also whatever else you want it to be. So it in many ways, it probably is a little bit more fun to draw.
And what was Dark Horse's loss was DC and DC comic fans' gain, I think. And on that bombshell, as they say, we have out of time. Thank you for coming along. Thank you, Lee, for giving up your time today on a busy packed schedule. Back you go to the table and get some.
Let me take this chair downstairs. I'll have one of them.
Stick around by Kieran Gillen if you want to. That's the next one. Thank you very much for your